Welcome to the Brag Effect, where we share easy to understand customer service tips from business owners and leaders that will help you get your customers bragging about you in all the right ways. Hi, I'm your host, Michelle Adams. A big thanks for joining us. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Catherine Devrye. She's the author of #1 bestselling book, Good Service is Good Business, something that's important to everyone in any organisation. She hasn't just written one book, she's published 9 other bestsellers and translated into over a dozen languages, including Hope Happens and Hot Lemon and Honey. And the late Sir Edmund Hillary said, information in this book can lead you on the road to success. And it must work because Catherine is a past winner of the Australian Executive Woman of the Year Award. She has a Master of Science degree and lectured at Melbourne Business School. In spite of being expelled from English in high school, she believes that the biggest challenge she's ever faced is coping with change on a daily basis as we serve our clients, our community, and ourselves. I know you'll get so much goodness out of this interview, and let's jump in. Catherine, I am just pinching myself. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for asking me.
So I have been such a huge fan of yours and following you for so many years. And first, hearing your name mentioned about around a boardroom table and many times subsequently, which was referencing your famous quote, the 6 most expensive words in business are we've always done it that way. So when we started the Brag Effect interview series, I had your name at the top of the list of people that I would love to speak to one day. And here you are. So it's just very surreal for me. I'm super excited to be speaking with you. And I know that the insights that you have are just going to be of so much value to so many people that get to listen to this interview. So thank you again for joining me. And so a fellow Aussie, you're living in Sydney now, but you're Canadian, is that right?
Canadian by birth, Australian by choice. I've been here for most of my life.
And what a great choice. That's such a stunning photo in the background. That beautiful painting reminds me of kind of Sydney.
You live up on the Sunshine Coast, and that photo, that painting is actually taken from a photo at Cotton Tree.
Oh, wow, that's like 10 minutes up the road. Wow. Beautiful. What's her name? Let's drop her name in there.
Let's drop her name in there. Gillian Noble.
Gillian. Well done, Gillian. That's stunning. So, Catherine, a best-selling author, you have written 9 books, which is just amazing. Some of them include Good Service is Good Business, Customer Service Zoo, The Nature of Resilience, Hope Happens, and Hope as My Compass, and Hot Lemon and Honey. That's just to name a few. So I want to get into a couple of them, but one of them is also called 50 Shades of Great Customer Service. And I just love this name. The book description, when I was reading about it, says, customer service may not be the sexiest subject, but you need a passion for it to be successful. And you really do need a passion for customers really to be successful in business, don't you?
You do. And that book, to be totally honest, Michelle, that book was a bit of a spoof. Good Service is Good Business was a book that was translated into dozens of languages with really solid content. But when the 50 Shades of Grey came out, I was just experimenting on Amazon with selling sort of a little book. And I just did it as a kind of a spoof and a giveaway. And it's just got quotes about customer service. Like, if you don't think a customer is important, try doing without one for 30 days. So I just, customer service isn't the sexiest title, but it's something that really does add value to your business if you really truly believe in establishing relationships with customers.
That's so true. So you talk a lot about, a passion to serve, to wanting to truly be of service to customers, service to colleagues, community, and to self. And I want to really get into each of these. But Tell me, you've worked with and delivered keynotes to hundreds of businesses across the globe, from Rolls-Royce to Coca-Cola to American Express. What would you say would be the fundamental difference that takes a business from great to exceptional?
I think the fundamental difference is good companies want to get better all the time. Good individuals want to get better all the time. It's interesting. When I first started my business, many people would say, oh, you got to go talk to this person or this organization because their customer service sucks. And it seems that the ones that needed me the most were the ones that never hired me. And I know when I got invited to speak to people like Microsoft or Rolls-Royce, I thought, what am I going to tell Rolls-Royce about customer service? Because the whole notion of you can be the Rolls-Royce of your business, Rolls-Royce just epitomizes the best. Coca-Cola is one of the biggest brands in the world. But I found it was those companies that just wanted to get a little bit better, to look at things a little bit differently, to challenge their thinking. And when I'm speaking to an organization, I'm not prescriptive and say you should do this or this or that. I act as a catalyst for change, for them to think of their own ways of doing things, because I'm not an expert in motor cars with Rolls-Royce or soft drinks with Coca-Cola or the British Broadcasting Corporation. I just take a brief from the client in terms of what they're trying to achieve, and I challenge people to think of things a little bit differently. And without question, the organizations that are top of their game are always looking at just one little thing they can do to improve things differently. And I've got emails from people saying they've saved $300,000 or improved productivity 20%. But it's not what I said, it's what they heard and what they then chose to do with what they heard to put it into effect in their business. So it's not just the philosophy, it's kind of connecting the philosophy and the thinking and the leading edge thoughts with practical stuff that they can do.
So service to customers, how would you say a business could say, these days, keep a customer for life? Or what does customer for life mean to you? What would you say to that one?
To me, a customer for life is looking after a customer and not giving them a reason to change, not giving them a reason to go somewhere else. And I call this, in one of my books, I think I termed it the wombat theory of marketing. I know you're a marketing expert, Michelle, but to me, wombat stood for word of mouth, best advertising technique. Because really, you can spend squillions of dollars on ads, on social media, on traditional radio or TV ads. But if two people are speaking to each other at the footy or at the park or after school, and they're saying, I wouldn't deal with that organization or that person because of whatever, what are customers going to believe? The fancy ads or the word of mouth? Now, that's where social media has really changed things quite dramatically for the consumer. But of course, you can't believe everything you read on social media either, as I'm sure you know. But really creating long-term relationships. And I used to be in sales at IBM for many years, and IBM was a great company. They were the most respected company in the world at the time. I was very proud to work for them. And when I was doing my sales training, we were always taught how to close a sale. But to me, that's very old fashioned. To me, these days, rather than close a sale, you open a relationship. And you open a long-term relationship with that customer, not just in and out, but open that long-term relationship to stay in touch with them, to see how you can genuinely help add value to their business. And if you're adding value to their business and they're seeing that, they're going to keep coming back to you. Now, I know you're a marketing consultant, Michelle, but I've never spent any money on marketing. I've relied on my customers and that word of mouth. And even you mentioned Rolls-Royce in your opening remarks. That job I did for Rolls-Royce in Korea resulted as a referral from somebody who heard me at a construction conference in Oman. And that resulted from someone who heard me at an IT conference in Mumbai. And that resulted from someone who heard me at a conference in Adelaide. And there was about 7 or 8 years in between. And I stay in touch with my customers. Once somebody is a customer of mine, they're a customer for life unless they opt out of my emails. So I really think and I genuinely care about my customers. I really do. I'm just so incredibly fortunate to have customers all big and small. And I think it's that genuine caring. And I think it's important also that we connect the head and the heart in terms of giving great service.
And you mentioned word of mouth, and I love that, Wombat. I'm definitely going to use that again. I mean, this is the benefit of, this is brag reviews. I mean, we're helping businesses listen to the voice of their customer. And a lot of consumers now are reading reviews online, so it's not just in the footy field sort of after school. Absolutely. It's also now with what people read online. So that wombat theory still applies today. And you've mentioned this, and I've heard you mention this before too, that industries change, businesses change, but there's still some fundamental basics that still apply when it comes to service to customers.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned reviews, because I had a situation probably about 5 or 6 years ago where it's through a technical glitch that all my reviews on Amazon dropped off. And that was when the books were, like #1 bestsellers, and I was getting lots of reviews. And through this technical glitch, I lost all of my reviews. And I guess I should be a little bit more diligent in trying to get some back. But it is so important to get those reviews. And you talk about the technology side of things. I think it's also important that people combine the high tech with the high touch. And you can, do lots of things in terms of, and I'm not a technology expert, all those years at IBM, and I'm probably the most low-tech person they ever employed, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I think it's combining the high-tech stuff with the high touch, and the high touch is that good old-fashioned common sense. It's that good old-fashioned service and reaching out and genuinely connecting, not just virtually. So I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to advise anything technical, but I think if you can get that mix right of the high-tech stuff with the high-touch stuff, I think that's going to position any organization really well for the future. I'm just in the process of moving house, and I've got a few quotes from removalists, and some of them had the great websites, but you couldn't get through to them on the phone, or they showed up and, oh, this is a bit too much trouble and blah, blah, blah. Whereas the guy eventually hired, he didn't have the fancy website, but he showed up on time. He communicated via text and, everything. And I thought, no, I don't need high tech for a removalist site. And I've actually spoken at the British Removalist Conference in Edinburgh many, many years ago. And, I'm sure, I think it's great to have a good website and all of that stuff, but the 2 guys I dealt with to try and get someone to come and quote on my move, and it's different during COVID, and a lot of these guys are struggling to get staff that are within our local government areas, and I can respect all of that, but the guy that I hired doesn't even have a website. He actually came and he was apologizing. He said, I've got a website, but it's really only got my name and my contact details. I said, that's okay, Jason. I have, convinced you're going to do the job because one of my friends told me.
Yeah. Gold. That's the word of mouth.
Yeah.
Sure. So service to colleagues, this is, one thing that I love talking about also in terms of culture in an organization, because it's not just taking care of our external customers, it's taking care of our internal customers, which is our colleagues and our team. I'm keen to hear your view on, how to get emotional buy-in of your brand's why.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to understand that it's the customer who pays their salary, and that they all work together. And like some people might say, I've spoken to a lot of organizations where a lot of the staff never interact with the customer directly, because it's not just the sales staff or the marketing staff or the PR staff. And, they sort of sit out and go, oh, customer service, that doesn't apply to me. But I always say, if you're not serving a customer, you should be serving somebody who is, because it's everyone in the whole organization. They're not paid by the finance department. They're not paid by the boss. They're paid by that actual customer. And I used to be a physical education teacher a long, long time ago, and I use a lot of sporting analogies in my presentations. And one of my favorite ones is comparing a customer a little bit like a baton on a relay race. So imagine you're a member of an Olympic team and you're carrying the baton. This is a pencil, not a baton, by the way, but you're carrying the baton. So you've got two jobs. One, you've got to run like blazes and add value with every step you take when you're carrying that baton, that customer. But as a member of a team, you've got another responsibility. You need to understand the strengths and speed and weakness of who's passing you the baton and practice that smooth transfer of customer from one person to another, because you can have record-breaking performances in one part of your organization. And if you drop the baton, you've lost it. So you get everyone on the team understanding that they are part of the team, even if they never see a customer, if they're in the invoicing department or whatever. And the best example of that, many years ago, I was speaking at a conference too, and I know you used to be in real estate, Michelle. I was speaking at a real estate conference over in Perth many, many years ago. And I arrived with no voice, which is an occupational hazard as a professional speaker. And I was going through, checking in, and the receptionist went through her standard checklist. This is the pool, this is the golf course. And I went, I'm sick, I don't care, I just want to go to bed. And I get to my room, and about 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. Room service. And I went, I didn't order room service. And the voice on the other side of the door said, yes, Miss Devrye, we know you didn't order room service, but we also know you're not feeling well. And we've got some hot lemon and honey with our compliments.
Ah.
Sure enough, on a tray with some hot lemon and honey and a vitamin C tablet. What's more, there was a handwritten note from the chef that said, if you'd like anything special for dinner that's not on the menu, like chicken soup, we'd be happy to do that. There was another handwritten note from the concierge that said, if you'd like us to go into town and get you drugs, legal sort that is, we'd be happy to do that. Now, I get to stay, well, I did before COVID, I used to stay in lovely hotels 60, 70 nights a year. But long after I forget how much marble is in the foyer, how fancy their website is, what great shampoos are in the shower, what do I remember? That hot lemon and honey service, because that receptionist did not check her brain in when she arrived at work. She treated the customer, the baton, passed it seamlessly along from one person to another, and it made it a fantastic experience for me, which then prompted me to write a book called actually Hot Lemon and Honey.
Love that name. Who doesn't love hot lemon and honey?
Just like hot lemon and honey soothes your throat, that receptionist soothed me when I was feeling sick. And I called her in the next morning to the real estate agents, and they gave her a standing ovation. And she said, shucks, I was just doing my job. She said, I was just putting myself in your shoes, how I'd feel if I was sick and a long way from home. And to me, that really symbolizes connecting the head and the heart about really, putting yourself in the customer's shoes and working together with other members on the team. And I can't think of a better way to exhibit it than that. And as I mentioned, I'm moving house. So whenever you move, you've got to clean, stuff and stuff. And I came across a letter from her when I wrote Hot Lemon and Honey. I actually mentioned her in the book. And I came across that letter from 15 years ago or so. And I sent her a copy, and she's now in a totally different industry. She's in the aged care industry. But I use that so very, very often. And I just think it was, and that's an interesting point too, because service is only as good as what you get at that point in time. I went back to that same hotel for another conference a couple of years later. It was under different management, and the service was dreadful. The same hotel, the same layout, the same everything, but there had been a change in management. And I think the guy at the top at the time was a bit of a jerk from what I gathered from speaking to some of the staff. It had changed the culture, and it was a totally different culture.
That is so true. And I've had that experience myself where my loyalty to a car dealership where I had my Jeep service for many years was because really of the service manager made me feel like a VIP.
Yes.
And he always looked after me. He always made sure my car was washed, and, he was brilliant. And I stayed loyal to that business because of him. And then he left, and, my experience has been quite the opposite, which is really disappointing. So from a company's perspective, like if you think about that lovely lady with the hot lemon and honey tea, Is that something that you think the hotel management have trained down the line, or do you think that that just comes from within?
I think that having spoken to her, I mean, I guess it's different in different occasions, but that came from within. But it would have been a combination of both. It would have been a combination of both. And I think, again, customer service, it comes from the top in terms of the culture that you create, in terms of how you reward people within that culture. Like, okay, did she receive a bonus or something as a result of that? And in terms of how many people have I told about that? And I guess I'm not mentioning the name of the hotel because, you know, for various reasons, I told a lot of people at it at the time, but I'm very
You
careful.
probably sent them a lot of business over the years.
Well, yes and no, but I also, because of what I do, I have to be very careful of who I endorse, because I could
Yes.
endorse that hotel and it could be up on my website and you could go there 6 months later and it's changed. And suddenly it impacts my credibility if I've given it, an endorsement. So I will tell everybody about it at that point in time, but with that disclaimer,
Yeah.
it changed.
And like you said, next time you went back years later, it wasn't the same experience.
It was.
So there must, you wonder, is that something that fell down in terms of the training, or that, or is it just that you're lucky as a business to get someone who's really stands out?
It could have been, I think generally a lot of organizations, I generally think it's a culture and it starts from the top. It's rewarding good behavior. It's not just employee of the month or something like that, but it's that whole overall culture. That still means you can have a great company and a great culture, and there still can be bad service on one day for whatever reason. It might be that, the website's down. It might be that the person's dog died that morning. I mean, there still can be things go wrong no matter how good a culture that there might be. But it's when there's consistency or inconsistency, as the case might be, then you know that it relates to the culture.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then service to community. So, this is something that I think that, a lot of businesses are really, it used to be quite rare, I think, for a business to really give back to community, but now it feels like there are a lot of really standout experiences where, there's companies that are supporting, whether it's through their, from an ethical or environment standpoint, or they're supporting community in other ways, whether it's, a sponsorship or something in terms of giving back. And, I think I love the whole scope of, service to customer, to colleague, to community, to self. So community, is there any kind of points that you want to add on that one?
Well, I guess we do live in a holistic society, and I don't believe that our work life is totally independent from our personal lives. Our personal and our professional lives can be matched. And when I first wrote Good Service is Good Business, which is now more than 20 years ago, it's like 25 years ago. It's now in the first edition. Again, I came across all this stuff when I was moving. The first edition talks about fax machines and things like that. And when I first wrote Good Service is Good Business, I'd lived in Japan for a couple of years, where the word customer literally translates into honored guest in one's home. So I was totally passionate. When I came back to Australia after 2 years working for IBM in Japan, I was totally passionate about improving service levels at home in Australia, where I've lived for most of my life, even though I have this Canadian accent. And so that's what was my focus for probably about the first 10 years of writing the book and my speaking business, focus on the customer and all of those things. But then clients started asking me back to speak about stuff like about teamwork and about their own personal challenges. And I came across a fabulous quote by a Canadian missionary, which I had never heard of before in my entire life. And it was a guy called William Grenfell. And he said, service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth. And to me, this guy, I've seen it subsequently on websites as attributed to other people, like more famous contemporary people, but that's where it originated from. And to me, that's really what it's about. It's about service. We're all here on, to be useful. And that's one of the definitions of service, is to be useful. And I think that's really important, and to be useful in our community, and yeah, to make, I don't know, to make a living and make a difference at the same time. And I don't believe they need to be mutually exclusive. And that's just my own personal belief and philosophy.
Well, that's a great one to live by. I want to can we repeat that quote? Because I want to let that sink in. So it's
What did I just say?
service to others. The quote from the
Oh,
gentleman.
from W.T.
Service.
Grenfell, service to others is the rent we pay for our room here on earth.
Oh, wow. That is gold.
It is just,
Yeah.
I wished I'd said that. I mean, it was, it was just so brilliant. And again, nobody's heard of this man. He was a missionary. And I'm not even quite sure where I came across that quote, because I'm a voracious reader and I read lots of stuff, like philosophical stuff. And when I came across that, it was just a light bulb moment. And I go, why haven't I heard it? So he's subsequently in a couple of my other books. I quote him all the time, but I wasn't the first one that came up with that quote. He was back in the 1800s, I believe. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact date.
No, that's really powerful. Service then to self. And you mentioned earlier the question that you ask of yourself is, and this is what you say to companies, the question that you ask of yourself is not how good you are, but how are you good enough to want to get better? So service to self, I mean, for you, is that self-awareness? Is it work-life balance? Is it following your passions? What's service to self?
It's probably all of those. And again, it's different to different people. For me, I don't believe we can take care of our customers if we don't take care of ourselves. And I used to say, oh, the customer is the most important person. No, I don't believe the customer is the most important person. I believe the individual is the most important person. Even if you're a family, you can't take a mom, and you're a mom. You can't take care of your kids if you don't take care of yourself. You can't take care of your staff if you don't take care of yourself. You can't take care of your customers if you don't take care of yourself. And taking care of yourself operates on a number of different levels, on a physical level, on an emotional level, and probably on a spiritual level. And I mean, to me, I've always focused on the physical side of things. As I mentioned, I used to be a physical education teacher, and I mean, I exercise every day, and of some.
And you're a surf lifesaver.
I am. I'm a volunteer surf lifesaver at Manly
That's
Beach.
awesome.
I only qualified as a surf lifesaver 7 years ago. So, I mean, if anybody was in serious trouble, I'd send out one of the young dudes in their Speedos. I'm more of the preventative side of things. But I am a surf lifesaver. But I swim, I cycle, I walk, I play a bit of golf very badly. But I
trekked in Timbuktu.
Yes,
and
I love being out in nature. I've trekked beyond Everest Base Camp and to Timbuktu. In fact, my next book is called Timbuktu to Kathmandu, but I haven't found a publisher for it yet. And people say to me, and they said, especially when I'm traveling, people say, well, how do you find time to write books and speak and do all of these things? How do you find time to exercise? I said, if I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time for anything. Because for me, the days that I miss my exercise, and people say, oh, they feel guilty of their exercising if they've got so much to do work-wise. I say, I never feel guilty because I'm a compulsive list maker, Michelle, I've got to confess. And I have a do list every day. And the top of my do list is exercise, stretch, meditate. So, and then I cross it off every day, and I don't feel guilty because it's part of my core
routine, yeah,
what I do. And so I really don't believe we can take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves. And I'm not talking about, you don't have to do anything as strenuous as trek beyond Everest Base Camp, but you can do gardening, and also in terms of the mental health side of things as well. I wrote a book a couple of years ago on lessons from nature about resilience called The Gift of Nature, Inspiring Hope and Resilience. And there's so much research to show that time spent in nature actually helps with resilience. And there was a study done in Norway about gardening, and they did I don't remember the exact details, but they did a study of some people on antidepressants, some on a placebo drug, and some on gardening. And the people that were gardening did just as well as the people on the antidepressants in that particular study. Now, I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. But there's research from Stanford Stanford University, that shows time in nature helps with our mental well-being. And again, that's taking care of yourself in order to take care of your family, your customers, and everybody else. And I think I can't think of anything worse than gardening myself. But whatever it is that makes you feel your fuel tank is full, whether it's, like I hate gardening. I just can't think of anything worse than, I hate cooking. I know people that love cooking and
I love cooking.
I know, yeah. I'm sorry, I love eating, which is why I have exercise. But it's different for everyone, and it's not one size fits all, but find what it is that, because otherwise we run on empty, and we recharge our laptops, we recharge our mobile phones, but whatever it is that recharges you, make sure you make time for that. Really, and if you feel guilty about doing it, put it on your do list, tick it off, and you no longer feel guilty.
It's true. I spent some time with corporate psychologist recently on an interview, and she was talking to me about time blocks. And so I've learned that I've gone from the to-do list to now time blocking, and I'm getting more done, and I'm also scheduling in time for myself. So yoga, fitness, whatever it is, it's in the diary for that time, and it's been a game changer.
Okay. I'm still traditionally, I haven't changed that. I'm still the traditional to-do list, which
whether it's whatever works, right? Whether it's
at the moment,
whether it's on your list or whether it's in your diary, as long as what you're saying is spend time for yourself.
I think it's important, and and it's still, and I think it's whether you work for an organization or you work for yourself. When you work for an organization, there's a certain amount of discipline built in. But when you work for yourself, as you do and as I do, I'm very self-disciplined. And friends know, don't even think of calling me during the day unless something is really urgent, because I work during the day. I'm self-employed. I'm not unemployed. And I set those boundaries. And I think, again, in terms of giving great service, or achieving anything in terms of being successful, you need to set boundaries, you need to set expectations, and then you need to deliver on those expectations and those promises you make. And I found during COVID that there was a lot of time wasted in early stages in terms of, we kind of wasted a lot of time and energy complaining about things, saying what they should do or the government should do this. And then it was an excuse not to do things rather than, okay, let's focus on what we can change and not waste a lot of energy on stuff that we cannot change. And I think that's really important as well. And again, when I first started speaking, I only spoke on customer service. And then clients wanted me to speak on managing change. And now I speak probably more on change and resilience, as much on that, at least, as I do on customer service. In fact, I would say probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I speak more about, change and resilience, but also ultimately it gets back to the service, so that service to yourself or service to your customers.
Yeah, and resilience. That you talk about that, in a couple of your other books. Hope happens. Words of encouragement for times of change. And I just want to read the description for our listeners for the book that says, life isn't always easy. Sometimes we all need a little boost. And here is a book that has one on every page. Whether you've had your heart broken, lost your job, a loved one, or just your zest for life, the ageless words of encouragement found here will help you jumpstart your hope. So, then and also again in Hot Lemon and Honey, reflections for success in times of change. So I can definitely see this theme of resilience and hope that's come through in your most recent books. And I know you wrote Hot Lemon and Honey in 2000, which is now in its 4th edition. Is that right? Yeah. And, I love that name. You mentioned it earlier. Who doesn't love a dose of hot lemon and honey? But, talk about times of change, and resilience that we need to have now, with lockdowns and where we are and what we've been faced with in these past 18 months. And so many people are struggling with the unprecedented change. How can people have resilience and hope with what's going on for us around the world right now?
Well, it's almost an identical question that I was asked on CNN International about 10 days ago, because Hope Happens actually resulted after speaking at a conference in Brisbane on 9/11. Anyone over 30 knows where they were on 9/11. I was the keynote speaker at the World Airline Conference on 9/11.
Wow.
Topic was 1,600 delegates at the Brisbane Convention Centre. The topic was, you can't control change, you can only control your attitude towards change. And I was at Brisbane Airport on the way home, and a friend called to say her mom had died of cancer that day. And to her, that was a much bigger tragedy than thousands of people on the other side of the world, even though my friend was a very compassionate person. And it made me realize it's the everyday tragedies in our everyday lives that we have the hardest time coping with. And I've kept an inspirational diary of inspirational sayings every night since I was 16. And my parents died when I was 21. And I arrived in Australia. I had no family, and my life was at an all-time record low. And I'm still frantically, I was writing in the diary. So my friend said her mom had died, I started writing a letter to her that morphed into this book called Hope Happens, which is the opposite of Shift Happens. That's shift with an F. But sometimes we don't put the F in.
No.
And it's sort of, but whether we've lost a loved one, we've lost our health or wealth, we really can't lose hope. Not just false hope, like I'll just sit here and meditate and hope everything gets better, but positive attitude combined with positive action in terms of moving forward. And I think COVID, to me, seemed a lot like 9/11. There was a fear of the unknown, where we may have feared, young Muslim men. We then feared this mystery disease that probably came from China. And there was this fear and this uncertainty. And I found there was so much negativity around, for people were just going, oh, they should do this or they should do that, or what's the point, And look, I think everybody I know has coped with it differently, but I know very few people that have not been impacted by it. And I myself have had times where, I've had, technology. I've only spoken to a live audience 3 times in 18 months. Other conferences were all being canceled, and I really, really missing it. And I miss the live interaction way more than I miss the money, to be perfectly honest. I miss that connection. And so I've had, times where, I've had maybe a health issue or a technology issue. And I've had times where one of my friends have said to me, why don't you read your own book? Because it's
thanks
different.
for that.
It's different when when you're caught in it yourself, and all this shift is happening around you. And I think sometimes we just need reminders of things that we can do and not waste energy on stuff that we can't do. And again, I'm, being fortunate to have good friends that aren't, afraid to point out to me, just think about it. And we all need reminders of what we can do. And I think it is, very, it's more challenging. I feel I'm in so much better off. I always remind myself, like if I'm having one of those shift days, I remind myself, like, I don't live in Afghanistan. I'm not homeschooling. There's so many people that are doing it so much tougher. So I think that whenever we're having those tough times with our own resilience, I have to remind ourselves of that. And
to have gratitude for what you do have.
Exactly. And it's, it's funny, I'll speak about my own journey, but for 17 years, I never even told close friends that my parents had died, because I didn't want sympathy. When they gave me sympathy, I probably got emotional. And now I talk to total strangers. Since my memoir came out, Hope is My Compass, I was invited, when I won the Telstra Executive Woman of the Year award, journalists were saying, well, how is it a Canadian came to win the Australian award? And as I said, I'd never shared that story apart from 2 or 3 very close friends, because I had it all bottled up inside. And again, now I share it with total strangers to help them turn their stumbling blocks into stepping stones faster and more elegantly than I did, and to never be too proud to ask for help, because I think I could have moved on a lot more quickly in terms of my emotional well-being if I'd have got some professional help earlier, if I'd have shared it with, rather than have it all bottled up inside. And one of the royalties from one of my books, well, from Hope Happens, go to the Cancer Council, and from the Nature of Resilience book, go to Lifeline. And I learned when I was speaking at Mental Health Week a couple of years ago, I saw somebody showed up and he had a very funny T-shirt on. It said 4 out of 3 people suffer from mental health issues. And I thought, whoa, that's really funny. And then I thought about it and I thought, oh, it's not that funny. But it's funny statistically. But all of us, I don't care who you are, and I've been privileged in my role to meet famous household names when you're speaking at conferences all around the world. But I think all of us have mental health issues, mental health challenges from time to time. That doesn't mean we have a mental health illness, and there's quite a difference between the two. And I've been fortunate. I've never been to that tipping point of tipping over, but there's been times I've been in tears. There's been times I felt total despair. And I think we all do, but I think we should never be too proud to reach out for help. And I think during COVID, I think a lot of things are very exacerbated. And again, I'm not a psychologist, but I think my generation was too stubborn. We would, I remember when my folks died, the hospital said, would you like counseling? Would you like medication? I went, no, that's for crazy people or people from California. We Presbyterians don't do that. We don't wear our heart on the sleeve. So I had all that grief bottled up for years. And I think that was wrong. Not wrong. I don't think it was healthy. It wasn't right or wrong. It was right for me at the time. That was my coping mechanism. But I don't think it was as healthy as it could have been. But I think possibly we've got to be cautious of going to the other side. If we break a fingernail, we need to see a psychologist. I think, and again, you mentioned I'm a surf lifesaver. Again, on resilience, if I see a kid fall down on the beach in the sand, you can tell they don't hurt themselves. So I say to the kid, good fall, up you get. Whereas the first thing a child does when they fall down, they look up at a parent. If there's a parent or a grandparent or an adult, they go, oh, you poor dear. The kid bursts into tears. If you go, great fall, because I believe we, get up and do it again. They go, oh, okay. And I believe we learn resilience from failing, from falling. And one of my favorite sayings, I lived in Japan for 2 years. One of my favorite sayings is an old Japanese proverb. It says, fall 7 times, stand up 8. And I think that's, I think we can sometimes mollycoddle people too much. I think if you're in your own business, you learn, or even not, if you're in a big organization, you fail and you fail early. I remember having worked for IBM, Thomas Watson was the founder of IBM. And there's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a very apocryphal story of a young man who had failed in some, computer development. And he was called into the CEO's office, Tom Watson, and he's like going, oh, I'm going to get fired, and he said, I'm really sorry, I'm going to get fired. And Thomas Watson said, no, son, you're not going to get fired. Tell me what you learned from that mistake. And to me, if we fail and we fail often, we manage failures, we take little risks, we learn from those. I think that's always a really, really good thing.
So you mentioned perspective, and I think that was, it's so powerful when there's two. It's like what you talked about with the little boy that falls down on the beach. There's 2 ways of looking at anything. There's the fear, or there's the okay, well, what's great about this? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? What's great? And come from that place of gratitude, as opposed to poor me or the pity. And that just reminds me of a beautiful, very special girlfriend of mine had, started 2020 with, her big grand business plan. She had a wedding planned, found out she had breast cancer second time round. And then, COVID hit. So wedding was cancelled. Family, she's from Canada too. So all her family and friends from Canada couldn't join for the wedding. And so she's been through this journey. She's just had a double mastectomy and she's happy and healthy. But she's written a book called The Healing Journal, The Gift of Breast Cancer.
Okay, good for her.
I mean, just incredibly inspiring story of resilience. And it just, I wanted to mention that because it's such a good reminder to have a perspective. There's two perspectives, and to have that perspective of hope as opposed to fear is really a game changer, isn't it?
And good for her for doing that too, because, when I arrived in Australia, my life was at an all-time record low. My parents had died. I'd been dumped by my, sort of fiance at the time. But just like in customer service, I believe every complaint is an opportunity because it gives you a chance to fix it, because it's your most loyal customers who complain. I believe in life that most problems are opportunities, not all, but most problems are opportunities. And the biggest problem of my life turned into the biggest opportunity of my life. And being an Australian citizen, I'm now an Australia Day ambassador. And yet I never could have dreamed that at the time. And when I arrived, I just came for a 3-month working holiday, and I was on a path of self-destruction in terms of, drinking too much, eating too much, partying too much, all of those things. And I went through that, and whoa, this isn't fair. Why did this have to happen to me? And I'm sure your girlfriend went through that as well, because you do. It's a natural thing to do. This isn't why. It's that she was getting all these double whammies from triple whammies from everywhere. But there comes a point in time where you've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice if you're going to be a victim from change or a victor from change. And she's obviously made that choice to become a victor and to write stuff down to help other people as well, because we all, shift happens to all of us, regardless of age, gender, religion, whatever. And we've always faced with that choice if we're going to wallow in the shift, or we're going to take even little baby steps in terms of moving forward and focusing on what we can do. And as I said, a few months back now, again, one of my friends said, read your own book. And I thought, yep, sometimes you just need that little reminder, someone who's a little cheerleader, because we all get kind of, in our narrow lane of thinking. And I think during COVID, when people have been isolated, that's very much the case. I was having, when COVID first struck, and that's hard to believe, it's 18 months ago now, isn't it? It's really impossible to believe. I was going, and all my conferences were canceled. I was on my way to Europe because I do a lot of work was doing a lot of work in Europe and that. And so everything was canceled, and I was moved my office into a home office, and I've got no conferences, and my literary agent had passed away. I can't get the book published. I go, if anyone was looking for a demotivational speaker, I was your girl. I was positive, and then I thought, okay, hold on, what can I change? I can't change COVID. I can't change travel. I can't change my lovely literary agent passing away. What can I change? So I thought, well, I can start working on a new book, which I've done. And then I thought what I could do, I could offer my book, Hope Happens, which was written after 9/11. I could offer that as a free ebook to everybody who was on my database, everybody on my mailing list, which I did. And I offered it as a free ebook, and it was, the people downloaded it. And I got quite a few emails and that from, clients and friends. And it was just everybody. It was just a spam email that went out. And then I got, a couple of weeks later, I received an email from the Cancer Council of New South Wales saying a donation had been made in my name. And I went, oh, that's strange, because the royalties from Hope Happens actually go to the New South Wales Cancer Council in memory of my parents, who both died of cancer. And so I thought, oh, I wonder where this donation came from. And it came from a young flight attendant with Etihad Airlines that I'd met on a flight 3 or 4 years earlier. He obviously got on my database, and he had got the book. He had downloaded the book, and he was in danger of losing his job working in the airlines business. He had shared that book with his colleagues, and he had made a donation from Abu Dhabi to Sydney. And to me, I'm sitting at my computer reading this email, just sobbing, because to me, that showed our shared humanity. It showed at a time, 9/11, we were frightened of young Muslim men. Now, at a time we're frightened of COVID, a young Muslim man made a generous donation to Cancer Council here. And to me, that kind of reminded me, and early on in this interview, Michelle, you asked the question about people's why. To me, that was my why. That's why I write. That maybe someone somewhere that I may never even meet might somehow be touched by some of the stuff I've written. Sorry, I rambled on. I can't forget the question was now.
No,
But
keep going. That's just incredibly
it
powerful. I
was
mean,
just, so I've got, like, I'm just looking around my office now, and I've got lovely letters from the mayor of New York and David Attenborough and stuff like that, and Sir Edmund Hillary. But the only one, I've only got two pinned up on my wall, and one is from that the Cancer Council printout from that young male flight attendant with Etihad Airlines, because that reminded me of my why. And that's helped me from the first early days of COVID. Whenever I come into the office, I say, oh, no speaking engagements and blah, 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 and I can't travel. I go, no, that's my why. And I think we all need those, keeping things at the front of our brain. And whether it's on I've often put quotes like maybe on a Post-it sticker on my fridge or on my bathroom mirror to just keep stuff front of mind. And I think that's just a real simple, easy tip. And what resonates for one person may not resonate for somebody else.
So what is your favorite quote?
It's really hard it changes from time to time, but one that's been pretty consistent and was on my business cards for some time. When I first arrived in Melbourne, I was teaching at Broadmeadows High, which was one of the roughest schools in Australia. And I was boarding with an elderly couple out in Oak Park called Frank and Betty Jansen. And Frank was a real sort of bloke. And he says, Kath, you're having a bad trot. And he said, shift happens. And he didn't use the word shift happens. He left out the F. And he was a real rough diamond with a heart of gold. But Frank said to me 9 little words that helped turn my world around. He said, Kath, you got to remember, every day above the ground is a good one. And that to me is something it gets quoted back at me by friends as well if I'm having one of those down days, and we all have them. But every day above the ground is a good one. And I guess probably now, as I'm getting a bit older, I think every day above the ground with your health and both mental and physical is a good one. If you're just alive for the sake of breathing, that's probably not the best. But anyway, I think it's great that things are changing with voluntary assisted living or whatever. So okay, that's not my field, but I still do believe that most days every day above the ground is a good one. But I do have a bit of a proviso on that now.
And so I've heard you reference a short description that you have for the word hope that represents each letter. Can you share that with us?
Oh my goodness. Okay, that was in an email that you probably saw that on the CNN interview, didn't you?
I did.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me see. HOPE. H is for help. Help others, because if you help others, my mission statement for my business is helping others help themselves. The O is for opportunity, and as we mentioned earlier, I believe every obstacle does have an opportunity. The P, I think, is for persistence. I don't know, how am I going here, Michelle? How's
Great.
The P is for persistence, because I believe that too many people don't succeed because they give up too early. And the E is for empowering people and being empowered yourself. So I really love acronyms, and like with Good Service is Good Business, that book was based on a very simple acronym of SERVICE, which I remember those ones. The hope one was one that I only wrote down once.
You got to share the service one with me now.
Service, the whole book is, let me see, it's called Good Service is Good Business. And it's a whole bunch of little it's an acronym. Each chapter is S for self-esteem, E for exceeding expectations, R for recovery, V for vision, I for improve, C for care, and E for empowerment. And because I think people remember simple things. I think one of the things with customer service, with change management, with resilience, I think one of the things that we fall into the trap of, we overcomplicate stuff. You just need to keep it simple and have something front of mind that people can easily remember. And in fact, when the removalist showed up the other day, I actually gave him a copy of the book. So he now knows I've got very high expectations.
He better deliver.
So I said, you probably don't need this because you showed up on time. You probably don't need this book, but it just might help you with other areas. You might want to share it with some of your staff. I said, you obviously don't need it because you're doing the right thing. And he went, wow, okay, thanks. So I know I've got him on side.
Well played. Catherine, I feel like we could just talk for hours. I could just listen to you for many hours, but I will wrap it up there. I'm so grateful that you've joined me today. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks, Michelle, for the opportunity, because I don't do a lot of, I've decided I really haven't done Zoom presentations, because I believe what I do when I'm speaking to audiences, it's a connection, and I give people more the why to than the how to. And I take a brief from the client in terms of understanding their challenges beforehand, and then connecting with the audience through a lot more, humor and that I think can come across on a video type of thing. So thank you for the opportunity. And I'm really, really looking forward to getting out there and speaking to live audiences again, and hopefully up at the Sunshine Coast. I'll get to meet in person.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And
so I just want to add for our listeners that Catherine's books are available on Booktopia, Amazon, or Woods Lane, and highly recommend them to reinforce and expand on the messages that you've heard here today. And you can also reach out and contact her to speak at your next conference at greatmotivation.com. And Catherine is also available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Catherine Devrye. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks so much. The Brag Effect is brought to you by Brag Reviews, the review management software that helps businesses improve their reputation, one review at a time. Check it out at bragreviews.com.